Miami summers never truly quiet down. Warm, year-round tropical breezes carry the briny tang of the Atlantic, weaving through swaying palm fronds that line the coastal retirement complex beside South Beach. Neon glints stretch across glassy ocean waters. Once the sunset fades, stars spill across the sky, wrapping the upscale beachfront apartment complex in hushed luxury, a dream retirement haven for countless American seniors. But beneath this soft, idyllic night, a betrayal sharper than any blade was about to unravel 6 decades of hard-won security for one 62-year-old woman. It was 3:07 in the morning, and nearly every resident in the oceanfront high-rise lay fast asleep. Past the floor-to-ceiling windows, waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, palm leaves whispering soft rustles in the wind. It should have been the calmest hours of rest. Then a shrill police siren split the silence without warning. Strobing red and blue light sliced through double-paned soundproof glass, flooding the living room of Unit 1208, flickering wildly across polished marble floors, cold and blinding. Martha Kane, 62, opened her eyes slowly. There was no panic, none of the terror most elderly folks would feel at cops showing up in the dead of night. She lay tucked into crisp cotton linens, her gaze steady on the flashing lights seeping through her curtain crack. Her chest held no storm of emotion, only a heavy, final cold settling deep inside her. This was no accident. Her own daughter had orchestrated this midnight ambush. Martha was a born and raised Floridian, a retired registered nurse who'd spent 40 years at Miami's public coastal hospital. Endless night shifts, endless overtime, endless grueling hours. Every penny she owned came straight from her own 2 hands. Her husband had passed away 20 years prior. She'd never remarried, raising her only child Lydia all alone. Every ounce of tenderness, every dollar saved, every scrap of grace, she had went straight to that one daughter. Now she owned this unobstructed oceanfront condo, the most coveted floor plan in the retirement community, with unbroken views of the beach and Atlantic sunsets stretching out her window. She also held a fully funded retirement trust fund, stashed away penny by penny, cut from every unnecessary luxury, reserved solely for her future medical bills, daily living, and emergencies. It was the only safety net she'd built after a lifetime of sacrifice. No debts, no dependents weighing her down. She'd earned a peaceful, financially secure old age, free to live out her days without worry. She'd never imagined the force that would drain her life savings and destroy her tranquil golden years wouldn't be illness, aging, or hardship. It would be the daughter she'd loved unconditionally, the child she'd bent over backward to protect. A sharp, official knock rapped against her heavy front door. Martha sat up slowly, smoothed her neatly trimmed gray bob, and adjusted her plain, soft cotton loungewear. Her spine stayed straight, her demeanor unruffled, no trace of sleep fog, no flicker of fear. She'd seen this coming the second she'd spent 2 months cross-referencing bank statements and spotted the missing funds. She'd read Lydia's greed, spotted her malicious streak, and prepared every piece of evidence long before tonight. She padded to the entryway and tapped the intercom screen. 2 night shift Miami PD patrol officers stood rigid, serious-faced. Right beside them stood her 27-year-old daughter, Lydia. It was 3 in the morning, yet Lydia wore full makeup and a sleek designer outfit, no hint of exhaustion from being roused at this hour. A flicker of desperate, vicious excitement glinted beneath her feigned watery eyes. Her shoulders shook in manufactured distress, and she murmured quietly to the officers, selling a masterful performance of heartbroken victimhood. Martha brushed a single finger over the cool glass of the intercom. The last faint thread of maternal affection she'd clung to for their mother-daughter bond shattered completely, turned to ash. Just days earlier, she gently confronted Lydia about the unauthorized withdrawals draining the trust account. All she'd wanted was an honest explanation, a chance for her daughter to make things right. Instead of remorse or an apology, Lydia twisted the truth entirely. She dialed 911 in the dead of night, fabricated an elaborate lie about financial fraud, and planned to use police authority to seize Martha's condo and empty every last dollar of her life savings, toss her 62-year-old mother out with nothing. Martha pressed the unlock button, calm and unshaken. The front door slid open. Cool night air thick with ocean salt washed over the room, carrying the officer's hard stares and Lydia's instantly switched-on look of wounded accusation. "Ma'am, We've received a formal complaint alleging you committed large-scale financial fraud using another party's social security number and concealed illicit capital assets. Your daughter Lydia has submitted supporting documentation, and we need to question you and audit all your personal accounts," the older officer said, flipping open his notepad, his sharp gaze sweeping the sprawling, high-end oceanfront condo. Lydia stepped forward half a pace, her voice thick with staged sobs, tears rolling freely down her cheeks on command. "Officer, I've carried this weight for so long. I never wanted to believe my own mother was capable of something like this. She's run hidden money transfers under my social security number to operate illegal financial schemes, stashing all her dirty cash in this trust fund and this condo. I begged her multiple times to turn herself in, but she just snapped at me and hid everything even harder. I had no choice but to call the police for help." As she rambled through her fabricated story, she pulled a stack of printed papers from her luxury handbag, laid out to look organized and damning. Nothing more than doctored, spliced bank records she'd forged late the night before. She swiped fake tears from her cheeks, but her eyes darted sideways to Martha, a tiny, taunting glint of victory hidden beneath her grief act. In Lydia's mind, her 60-something mother was soft-hearted, a lifelong people-pleaser who'd spent decades swallowing her pride to keep the peace. Once police stepped in to pressure her, Martha would crumble, stumble over her words, and surrender the condo and every cent without a fight. If she got her hands on that fortune, she'd never struggle to fund her lavish lifestyle again. This $1 million oceanfront Miami condo, paired with hundreds of thousands locked in the retirement trust, could bankroll her reckless spending for years. She coveted that fortune nonstop for 2 full years. 2 years prior, Martha had trusted her maternal instincts and worried about her own advancing age. What if she fell ill, or her mind slipped, leaving her unable to manage complex finances alone? She'd relented and granted temporary custodial access to her retirement trust to Lydia, her fully adult daughter. Before signing over the authority, Martha hammered out strict rules again and again. The account existed solely for Martha's unexpected medical crises and routine retirement costs. No massive unauthorized withdrawals, no personal splurges allowed. Back then, Lydia had gushed sincere promises, swearing she'd guard her mother's life savings like they were her own, never touch a cent without permission. In just 2 short years, every dollar Martha had earned over 40 grueling years of nursing had been chipped away, drained dry by the daughter she trusted above all others. Miami summers never truly quiet down. Warm, year-round tropical breezes carry the briny tang of the Atlantic, weaving through swaying palm fronds that line the coastal retirement complex beside South Beach. Neon glints stretch across glassy ocean waters. Once the sunset fades, stars spill across the sky, wrapping the upscale beachfront apartment complex in hushed luxury, a dream retirement haven for countless American seniors. But beneath this soft, idyllic night, a betrayal sharper than any blade was about to unravel 6 decades of hard-won security for one 62-year-old woman. It was 3:07 in the morning, and nearly every resident in the oceanfront high-rise lay fast asleep. Past the floor-to-ceiling windows, waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, palm leaves whispering soft rustles in the wind. It should have been the calmest hours of rest. Then a shrill police siren split the silence without warning. Strobing red and blue light sliced through double-paned soundproof glass, flooding the living room of Unit 1208, flickering wildly across polished marble floors, cold and blinding. Martha Kane, 62, opened her eyes slowly. There was no panic, none of the terror most elderly folks would feel at cops showing up in the dead of night. She lay tucked into crisp cotton linens, her gaze steady on the flashing lights seeping through her curtain crack. Her chest held no storm of emotion, only a heavy, final cold settling deep inside her. This was no accident. Her own daughter had orchestrated this midnight ambush. Martha was a born and raised Floridian, a retired registered nurse who'd spent 40 years at Miami's public coastal hospital. Endless night shifts, endless overtime, endless grueling hours. Every penny she owned came straight from her own 2 hands. Her husband had passed away 20 years prior. She'd never remarried, raising her only child Lydia all alone. Every ounce of tenderness, every dollar saved, every scrap of grace, she had went straight to that one daughter. Now she owned this unobstructed oceanfront condo, the most coveted floor plan in the retirement community, with unbroken views of the beach and Atlantic sunsets stretching out her window. She also held a fully funded retirement trust fund, stashed away penny by penny, cut from every unnecessary luxury, reserved solely for her future medical bills, daily living, and emergencies. It was the only safety net she'd built after a lifetime of sacrifice. No debts, no dependents weighing her down. She'd earned a peaceful, financially secure old age, free to live out her days without worry. She'd never imagined the force that would drain her life savings and destroy her tranquil golden years wouldn't be illness, aging, or hardship. It would be the daughter she'd loved unconditionally, the child she'd bent over backward to protect. A sharp, official knock rapped against her heavy front door. Martha sat up slowly, smoothed her neatly trimmed gray bob, and adjusted her plain, soft cotton loungewear. Her spine stayed straight, her demeanor unruffled, no trace of sleep fog, no flicker of fear. She'd seen this coming the second she'd spent 2 months cross-referencing bank statements and spotted the missing funds. She'd read Lydia's greed, spotted her malicious streak, and prepared every piece of evidence long before tonight. She padded to the entryway and tapped the intercom screen. 2 night shift Miami PD patrol officers stood rigid, serious-faced. Right beside them stood her 27-year-old daughter, Lydia. It was 3 a.m, yet Lydia wore full makeup and a sleek designer outfit, no hint of exhaustion from being roused at this hour. A flicker of desperate, vicious excitement glinted beneath her feigned watery eyes. Her shoulders shook in manufactured distress, and she murmured quietly to the officers, selling a masterful performance of heartbroken victimhood. Martha brushed a single finger over the cool glass of the intercom. The last faint thread of maternal affection she'd clung to for their mother-daughter bond shattered completely, turned to ash. Just days earlier, she gently confronted Lydia about the unauthorized withdrawals draining the trust account. All she'd wanted was an honest explanation, a chance for her daughter to make things right. Instead of remorse or an apology, Lydia twisted the truth entirely. She dialed 911 in the dead of night, fabricated an elaborate lie about financial fraud, and planned to use police authority to seize Martha's condo and empty every last dollar of her life savings, toss her 62-year-old mother out with nothing. Martha pressed the unlock button, calm and unshaken. The front door slid open. Cool night air thick with ocean salt washed over the room, carrying the officer's hard stares and Lydia's instantly switched-on look of wounded accusation. "Ma'am, we've received a formal complaint alleging you committed large-scale financial fraud using another party's social security number and concealed illicit capital assets. Your daughter Lydia has submitted supporting documentation, and we need to question you and audit all your personal accounts," the older officer said, flipping open his notepad, his sharp gaze sweeping the sprawling, high-end oceanfront condo. Lydia stepped forward half a pace, her voice thick with staged sobs, tears rolling freely down her cheeks on command. "Officer, I've carried this weight for so long. I never wanted to believe my own mother was capable of something like this. She's run hidden money transfers under my social security number to operate illegal financial schemes, stashing all her dirty cash in this trust fund and this condo. I begged her multiple times to turn herself in, but she just snapped at me and hid everything even harder. I had no choice but to call the police for help." As she rambled through her fabricated story, she pulled a stack of printed papers from her luxury handbag, laid out to look organized and damning. Nothing more than doctored, spliced bank records she'd forged late the night before. She swiped fake tears from her cheeks, but her eyes darted sideways to Martha, a tiny, taunting glint of victory hidden beneath her grief act. In Lydia's mind, her 60-something mother was soft-hearted, a lifelong people-pleaser who'd spent decades swallowing her pride to keep the peace. Once police stepped in to pressure her, Martha would crumble, stumble over her words, and surrender the condo and every cent without a fight. If she got her hands on that fortune, she'd never struggle to fund her lavish lifestyle again. This $1 million oceanfront Miami condo, paired with hundreds of thousands locked in the retirement trust, could bankroll her reckless spending for years. She coveted that fortune nonstop for 2 full years. 2 years prior, Martha had trusted her maternal instincts and worried about her own advancing age. What if she fell ill, or her mind slipped, leaving her unable to manage complex finances alone? She'd relented and granted temporary custodial access to her retirement trust to Lydia, her fully adult daughter. Before signing over the authority, Martha hammered out strict rules again and again. The account existed solely for Martha's unexpected medical crises and routine retirement costs. No massive unauthorized withdrawals, no personal splurges allowed. Back then, Lydia had gushed sincere promises, swearing she'd guard her mother's life savings like they were her own, never touch a cent without permission. In just 2 short years, every dollar Martha had earned over 40 grueling years of nursing had been chipped away, drained dry by the daughter she trusted above all others. Her fingertip brushed lightly over the signature, filing reference number, and official embossed seal on the contract as she continued steadily. The terms explicitly state this trust exists solely for my personal medical emergencies, everyday retirement costs, and unexpected living expenses. A custodian only holds limited administrative access. They are forbidden from making large withdrawals, diverting funds, or using the money for personal spending. I handed custodial rights to Lydia out of maternal trust alone. I never granted her permission to siphon money for her own luxury purchases. Next, she lifted a second thick binder filled with bank statements, its edges trimmed clean, every page marked with bright color-coded highlights. These are full transaction records from the trust covering the past 24 months, printed directly by the bank and verifiable online at any time. Every yellow highlight marks a withdrawal Lydia made without consent, 72 separate transfers, ranging from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars each, adding up to an enormous total stolen. The officers leaned forward at once to examine the logs line by line. The exact timestamp, login device, and transaction IP address were documented for every outgoing transfer, all linked exclusively to Lydia's personal cell phone and laptop. Not a single withdrawal traced back to Martha herself. Every large payment routed to luxury boutiques, sports car dealerships, high-end resort hotels, and trendy upscale restaurants, none of which had anything to do with Martha's medical care or retirement needs. The proof was undeniable, laid plain for all to see, leaving no room for denial. Martha did not pause. She pulled out a third set of exhibits, a neatly bound stack of printed receipts and digital billing screenshots. These correspond directly to each unauthorized transfer, receipts for designer handbags, couture apparel, fine jewelry, down payments and monthly installments on her sports car, plus hotel and flight invoices for her out-of-state vacations. All purchases were made by Lydia. Shipping addresses, traveler identification, payment terminals. Everything lines up perfectly to her. At this point, Lydia's mask shattered completely. She could no longer sustain her fragile, victimized demeanor. Her face blanched white, her gaze darting wildly away, hence trembling uncontrollably. She dared not meet the officers or Martha's eyes. She believed her transfers were discreet, her spending scattered enough to slip under the radar. She'd written her aging mother off as someone unfamiliar with financial audits, incapable of tracking every transaction or compiling complete proof. She'd underestimated Martha's meticulous mind, which had cataloged every trace of her 2 years of reckless overspending from start to finish. Finally, here is the most definitive evidence: audio recordings. Martha picked up her phone and pulled up a pre-saved backup audio file, playing it out loud with crisp, static-free sound. The recording captured multiple tense conversations where Martha had pressed Lydia over the missing funds. Listeners heard Lydia's initial evasions, her mounting rage when cornered, and her eventual unrepentant stonewalling, all preserved in full. Martha's soft, restrained voice cut through the audio first. "This money is my entire safety net for old age and medical emergencies. Why did you move it out behind my back to waste it?" Lydia's sharp, impatient retort followed immediately. "It's just some retirement cash. I'm your only daughter. All this money was mine anyway long term. What's the harm if I use a little early? You're too old to spend most of it, so why nitpick and hound me nonstop?" Those few words stripped bare Lydia's core character: selfish, greedy, utterly ungrateful. When the audio cut off, silence descended over the living room. The 2 officers exchanged a quick glance. They had pieced together the full truth without a shred of doubt. This was no case of an elderly resident committing financial fraud. It was an egregious civil dispute, an adult child draining her mother's life savings for years, then filing a false police report to maliciously frame her own parent. The senior officer closed his notepad, fixed a stern gaze on Lydia, and issued a clear formal warning. Miss, the supporting documents you submitted contradict every fact laid out here. You have filed a false police report and committed malicious defamation. The complete evidence on hand proves you have illegally withdrawn substantial sums from your mother's retirement trust over an extended period. She is not guilty of any financial fraud. Under Florida state statute, knowingly fabricating criminal charges to mislead law enforcement and falsely accuse another person constitutes a criminal offense. You will face corresponding legal penalties, and this incident will remain on your permanent record. That single legal warning erased every last shred of Lydia's delusional hope. She lost control of her emotions entirely, abandoning her polished, composed veneer and breaking down completely. It's not like that. She drove me to this. She's cheap and selfish. Lydia raised her voice to a shrill scream that echoed through the entire condo, harsh and jarring. She hoards all that money and refuses to help me when I'm struggling. This cash was always supposed to be mine. You're going to pass away sooner or later, so the condo and all the savings wind up mine regardless. I just took what I was owed ahead of time. What did I do wrong? She stamped her feet and threw a wild, hysterical tantrum across the spacious living room, her face twisted with venomous resentment, no trace of soft vulnerability left. Greed and bitter resentment drowned out every ounce of rational thought. Remorse never crossed her mind. She only seethed that her mother would not let her burn through a lifetime of hard-earned savings without pushback. Her screaming carried far, drifting through the open doorway and gaps in the hallway to wake every resident in the building. Neighbors from adjacent units and upstairs and downstairs apartments pulled on sleepwear and cracked their doors open. They gathered in a quiet crowd outside Unit 1208, watching the absurd, frigid mother-daughter spectacle unfold. Every onlooker was a retired senior living in the complex, most close to Martha's age. They knew firsthand how grueling a lifetime of labor was to build retirement savings, and they could easily imagine the crushing despair of having that security stolen by family. They watched the young girl twist the truth and throw a childish fit, listened to her shameless, self-serving tirades, then glanced over at Martha, standing straight, calm, quietly enduring the chaos, and immediately grasped the full truth of this fraudulent family betrayal. Murmurs of disapproval, sorrowful sighs, and scathing whispers rippled through the hallway crowd. Good Lord! To swindle your own mother's retirement money, how could anyone be that cruel? Martha's been through so much, raising her child alone all these years. Every penny she saved for her old age got blown through by her own daughter. Wasting her mom's money is terrible enough, but calling the police in the middle of the night to lie and frame her? That's pure malice. Every quiet judgment from the onlookers stung Lydia like a slap to the face. She met wave after wave of scornful, disgusted stares, drowning under the collective condemnation of the neighborhood. Humiliation pushed her further into hysterics, yet she refused to apologize or admit fault for a single thing. Martha remained rooted in place, her expression blank and unperturbed. She did not spare a glance for her raging daughter, nor pay mind to the chatter all around her. Outside the windows, the pre-dawn breeze stayed gentle, palm fronds swaying softly, the Atlantic tides rolling slow and steady. All the gentle beauty of the natural world felt starkly out of place beside this icy act of familial treachery. Anger and sorrow had faded entirely from her heart, replaced by unshakable clarity and quiet relief. 40 years of backbreaking labor, a lifetime of unconditional love and compromise, and all she'd received in return was greed, manipulation, and a midnight plot to destroy her golden years. Starting this moment, the daughter she'd loved every day of her life was nothing more than a stranger to her. Their mother-daughter bond was broken beyond repair. The officers issued Lydia a formal verbal warning on the spot, laying out all legal repercussions for filing a false report. They ordered her to leave the condo immediately, banned her from harassing Martha further, and told her to await follow-up police filing procedures. As officers escorted her out the door, Lydia shot Martha a venomous, gritted glare filled with bitter defeat, not a flicker of regret, only rage that her scheme had failed. The condo door slid shut, blocking out the racket and ugliness from the hallway. The gathered neighbors dispersed gradually, yet every one of them filed away the memory of this ungrateful, treacherous young woman who tried to rob her own mother's retirement. The police lights outside the windows flickered off at last, the shrill wail of sirens fading into the distance, leaving the condo wrapped in silence once more. Martha walked slowly to the floor-to-ceiling glass and gazed out at the vast, dark Atlantic. A faint pale streak of dawn painted the edge of the horizon. Miami's tropical sunrise was about to break. She had survived the coldest night of her life and seen the uncrossable line of human nature and blood ties laid bare before her eyes. From this moment forward, she was no longer a mother who bent over backward to accommodate her daughter's every demand. She was simply a woman living alone, determined to safeguard her home and every dollar she'd earned for her remaining years. Soft hearts and endless forgiveness never breed gratitude. Only firm boundaries and control over one's own assets can guarantee a peaceful old age. Chapter 3. Filing suit at dawn, the uncrossable line of her golden years. Miami's sunrises burst bold and brilliant. A little past 5 a.m., the sun crested the Atlantic horizon, spilling streaks of burnished gold across the entire ocean's surface. Shimmering ripples rolled and danced in time with the tides. Palm trees lining every roadway glowed warm amber in the morning glow, tropical blooms bursting open in full unruly bloom. The air hummed with the crisp, fresh scent of ocean brine and green foliage, wrapping the coastal city in vivid, gentle warmth, no trace of bleak chill anywhere. Martha had not slept a wink through the night, yet she carried no air of weariness or defeat. She finished a quick, simple wash, slipped into a crisp, pale casual set, combed her gray hair neat and tidy, and stood tall with clear, sharp eyes. No trace of the humiliation and betrayal she'd endured hours before lingered on her bearing. After last night's frigid, heartbreaking family fiasco, she did not sink into spiraling grief. Instead, she cast off decades of clinging hopes and emotional burdens all at once. Once, she dreamed of harmonious mother-daughter days, of relying on her child in old age. She'd softened every time Lydia messed up, yielded ground again and again to keep the peace. Now her eyes were fully open. True security in later years never came from filial devotion or a child's support. It came from assets firmly under her own control and an independent, unburdened life. She went through every piece of evidence she compiled the night before, double-checking every detail and filing them neatly into labeled professional document pouches. The trust contract, full bank transaction logs, proof of every unauthorized purchase, audio recording backups, and witness statements from neighbors formed an airtight, unassailable chain of evidence with zero gaps or weaknesses. Once the sorting was done, she picked up her phone and dialed to book a consultation with a top local Miami attorney specializing in elder financial and family law. Her demands were clear, unwavering, without an ounce of hesitation, no mercy, no compromise, no forgiveness. Attorney, good morning. I intend to file 2 formal lawsuits immediately. First, full recovery of every dollar my daughter embezzled from my retirement trust over these 2 years. I will pursue complete restitution, down to the last cent. Second, I demand full legal accountability for her false police report and malicious defamation last night, to the full extent of Florida law. After hearing her full account and reviewing the scope of her evidence, the lawyer responded without delay. Her evidence chain was complete, facts irrefutable, her victory guaranteed. He would open her case file that same morning and launch all formal legal proceedings right away. Hanging up the call, Martha stepped out of her condo and wandered slowly along the community's oceanfront boardwalk. The morning beach was soft and spotless, sunlight spilling warm over the water. Groups of early-rising elderly neighbors strolled the path, practiced Tai Chi, walked their pets, and chatted lightheartedly. Word of last night's chaos had spread across the entire retirement complex by sunrise. Every resident knew Martha's story, and all saw Lydia's ugly truth, greedy, entitled, willing to frame her own mother for her own gain. Several close friends who joined Martha weekly for flower arranging and beach walks spotted her walking alone and hurried over to check on her. None touched on the painful family scandal out of politeness, offering only sincere comfort and unwavering support. "Don't let this break you, Martha. We're all on your side," silver-haired Helen said, patting her shoulder gently, her tone heartfelt. "We've seen something off with Lydia for ages. These past 2 years, she's constantly buying new luxury cars and designer goods, partying nonstop without holding a steady job for a single day. We long suspected her money came from somewhere shady, but we never imagined she'd drain your life savings by preying on you." Frank, another retired senior who'd become her regular walking companion, spoke gravely in turn. "This is her failing, consumed by greed and ungratefulness. You do not owe her forgiveness, nor should you bend to spare her. A group of us seniors are ready to testify in court. We'll confirm how she's lived off your money for years, wasted cash on trivial luxuries, and never lifted a finger to care for you as a daughter should." The warmth of her neighbor's support wrapped around her like the soft morning sea breeze, washing away the cold left by her daughter's betrayal. Martha thanked them quietly, her heart growing clearer by the minute. Real peace in old age never hinges on blood ties alone. It comes from companions who share your values, the quiet confidence of financial self-sufficiency, and the clarity to hold fast to your boundaries. Martha spent the entire morning methodically advancing her legal fight. First, she visited the community management office to pull full security camera footage from the hallway the night prior, securing complete video proof of Lydia's late-night visit and hysterical public outburst. Next, she headed to her bank branch to get official stamped verifications for every bank statement, granting every piece of evidence full legal validity. Finally, she followed up with her attorney to finalize all court paperwork and lock in a trial date. Through every errand, she remained calm, rational, and organized, never succumbing to emotional exhaustion. Every step was deliberate and precise, all to protect the fruits of 40 years of hard labor and defend the non-negotiable boundaries of her old age. By midday, Miami's tropical sun hung bright overhead beneath a cloudless sky, mild winds drifting off the ocean. Martha passed the community senior center, where warm, cheerful laughter drifted through the open doors. Retirees filled the space, playing chess, arranging tropical bouquets, crafting handmade trinkets, and sipping afternoon tea, an image of quiet, untroubled golden-year bliss. Watching that peaceful, contented scene solidified her resolve even further. She'd spent her whole life working diligently, and she deserved this kind of calm, easy retirement. She would not allow a selfish, greedy child to drain, weigh down, and destroy everything she'd built. Soft-hearted leniency is a vulnerability. Firm boundaries are armor for your later years. Once, she'd loved too freely, letting her maternal kindness become Lydia's excuse to hurt her without consequence. From now on, she would only give care to those worthy of it, guard her peace fiercely, and waste not a single ounce of energy on a broken familial bond that brought her nothing but pain. Meanwhile, Lydia drowned in unrelenting panic and anxiety. Overnight, her scheme had collapsed completely, leaving her with nothing to show for her cruelty. She now bore allegations of filing false police reports and unlawful asset theft, a laughingstock across the entire complex, despised and shunned by every neighbor. Remorse never crossed her mind, not even a flicker. She felt only burning resentment and bitter disbelief. She could not fathom why her mother, who'd always catered to her every whim and given her endless leeway, had suddenly turned rigid and unyielding, refusing to indulge her greed any longer. In her warped mindset, Martha's assets existed solely to fund her lavish lifestyle, and her mother's love was supposed to come with unlimited compromise. After the officers sent her away the night before, she paced her tiny rental apartment restlessly. When she learned Martha had officially filed lawsuits and intended to pursue full punishment, terror crashed over her. She knew if she lost the case, she would be forced to repay every stolen cent in full, pay steep court fines, and carry a permanent civil misconduct record that would ruin her credit, job prospects, and every part of her future life. The consequences would be devastating. Desperate with nowhere left to turn, she bombarded Martha's phone with nonstop calls and flood after flood of text messages, attempting to tug at their mother-daughter bond to beg for forgiveness, and convince Martha to drop all lawsuits and settle privately. Her phone rang repeatedly, screen lighting up with messages filled with fake remorse, dramatic tearful apologies, and hollow promises to reform her ways. Martha glanced at the insincere words and endless missed calls without the slightest shift in her calm expression. She blocked every single one of Lydia's contact methods, cutting off all channels of communication entirely. One grows tired of false cries for mercy after too many lies. 2 years of secret embezzlement, a vicious midnight frame job, and a calculated plot to twist the truth had left wounds too deep to mend. There was no room left for forgiveness. The afternoon sun hung warm and glowing over Miami, palm fronds swaying gently in the wind, the soft evening ocean breeze already hinting at the sunset to come. Martha silenced all phone notifications, slipped on comfortable walking shoes, and joined the group of elderly neighbors heading out for their daily beach hike. The crash of waves surrounded her, salt wind brushing her cheeks. Beside her stood gentle, kind friends her own age, and before her stretched endless blue ocean streaked with soft sunset light. She'd fully let go of decades of misplaced devotion to her daughter. At last, she could live entirely for herself, stepping calmly toward a retirement that belonged solely to her. 1 week later, the Civil Court of Miami, Florida, convened to hear the case in full. The day shone clear and bright, tropical sunlight flooding every corner of the city. Palm trees lined the streets, evergreen and lush, tropical flowers blooming everywhere without a hint of gray or cold. The courthouse stood solemn and orderly. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling glass windows into the courtroom, filling the space with bright, unclouded light that embodied impartial justice. Martha wore a neat, understated formal outfit, her back straight and her demeanor unrushed as she sat calmly at the plaintiff's table. A full week of quiet reflection had steadied her heart completely. No lingering resentment, no burning anger stirred inside her, only quiet resolve to defend what she had legally earned and quiet acceptance of the path laid out before her. She followed her attorney's lead through every procedural step, composed, articulate, and unflinchingly dignified at all times. At the defendant's table, Lydia bore none of the polished glamour and brash confidence she'd carried just days prior. She wore cheap, plain clothing, her hair matted and unkempt, her face gaunt and exhausted with bloodshot eyes. Anxiety and defeat weighed heavy on her shoulders. All her usual cocky vanity had vanished, replaced by unrelenting fear and unease. Even before the trial opened, she clung to desperate hope that she could sway Martha. She sent mutual acquaintances to pass along pleas, loitered outside the condo building for hours each day, and repeated tearful apologies, begging for a chance to reform and promising to be a devoted, grateful daughter. All she wanted was for Martha to drop the lawsuits and spare her from punishment. Through every one of these desperate, groveling attempts, Martha remained firm, unmoved, and refused all contact. Softness and endless forgiveness could never awaken a conscience where none existed. Compromise only fed unbridled greed. More than 20 years of boundless maternal leniency had culminated in unforgivable betrayal and harm. She would never again open herself up to being drained or wounded by Lydia. The trial officially commenced, with prosecution and defense proceedings unfolding in methodical order. Martha's attorney laid out every piece of evidence before the judge and court in sequence: the original trust agreement, 2 full years of bank transaction histories, receipts for every unauthorized purchase, audio recordings of their confrontations, hallway security footage capturing Lydia's midnight meltdown, and sworn witness statements from neighbors in the retirement community. Every piece linked seamlessly to the next, forming an unbreakable, crystal-clear evidentiary chain. Faced with irrefutable proof, the truth spoke for itself. No further argument was needed. The court laid out the full sequence of events on official record. As the sole legal owner of the trust fund, Martha had granted Lydia temporary custodial power out of maternal trust, with strict written and verbal limits on how the funds could be used. Lydia violated every term of that agreement and abused her custodial access to secretly siphon money from her mother's retirement fund over 2 years in dozens of separate transfers, solely to fund her own luxury spending and mindless entertainment, constituting willful conversion of another party's lawful assets. When Martha uncovered the theft, Lydia concocted false allegations of financial fraud, dialed 911 to mislead law enforcement, and falsely accused her own mother in a malicious plot to seize all of Martha's property outright. Her actions were egregious and severe under state law. Multiple elderly neighbors from the coastal retirement complex took the witness stand one after another. They testified truthfully to Lydia's long history of unemployment, reckless overspending, selfish disregard for her mother's well-being, and refusal to fulfill even the most basic duties of a child. Their testimony reinforced every element of the case, painting a complete portrait of Lydia's character and pattern of exploitation for the court. Against overwhelming, unrefutable evidence and consistent witness testimony, Lydia's defense attorney had no viable counterarguments. Every attempt to excuse her conduct fell flat and lacked credibility. When called for questioning, Lydia rambled inconsistently, contradicting herself repeatedly and leaving gaps in her story she could not explain away. Eventually, she bowed her head in silence, conceding all charges of asset conversion and false reporting. Throughout the entire trial, Martha never spoke a single harsh word or lost control of her emotions. She stayed measured and serene, presenting facts, submitting evidence, and holding fast to her legal demands. Her poise, rationality, and quiet clarity earned genuine respect from the judge, court staff, and every observer present. Once all testimony and evidence were reviewed, the judge delivered a formal, decisive ruling from the bench. The judgment was firm, fair, and unambiguous. First, the defendant Lydia was ordered to repay the full sum of all retirement trust funds she had wrongfully withdrawn over 2 years, including all principal plus accumulated interest. Full payment was required in a single lump sum by a court-set deadline. Failure to comply would result in enforced collection and seizure of Lydia's personal assets. Second, Lydia was found guilty of filing a false police report and malicious false accusation, violations of Florida statutes governing public safety and judicial integrity. A fixed civil fine was imposed, and a permanent civil misconduct record would be created, accessible on public databases for the rest of her life. Third, all custodial authority over Martha's trust accounts was revoked immediately. Lydia was permanently stripped of any right to access or manage Martha's assets, and forbidden from interfering with or harassing Martha in her personal or financial life for any reason moving forward. The moment the ruling concluded, Lydia's strength left her entirely. She slumped back against the defendant's chair, her face ashen and her eyes hollow, every shred of hope and wishful thinking stripped away. The oceanfront condo and retirement savings she'd spent 2 years plotting to steal were forever out of reach. Far from enriching herself, she now carried crushing repayment debt and a permanent damaging record that had irreparably ruined her career and life prospects. When the trial adjourned, sunlight still poured warm over the courthouse, soft ocean winds drifting down the long hallways. Martha stood, turned, and walked out without a single backward glance at her broken, defeated daughter. No bitter rush of vengeful satisfaction filled her chest. Only quiet, weightless relief that the matter was finally settled. She had used the law to protect the life's work she'd built over 40 years, secured peace for her golden years, and permanently severed the draining familial bond that had burdened her for decades. Blood ties could never be a chain to trap kindness, nor could motherly love serve as an endless well for greedy demands. A child consumed by ingratitude and greed deserved not 1 ounce of mercy or unconditional grace. Once the court judgment landed, Lydia's life crumbled completely, plummeting straight to rock bottom. All the glitzy, flashy luxury she'd grown accustomed to vanished without a trace, leaving nothing but unrelenting humiliation and crippling financial strain in its wake. 3 crushing burdens weighed down every part of her existence: a permanent civil misconduct record, a documented criminal file stemming from her false accusation, and an overwhelming debt of restitution. Her credit was destroyed beyond repair. No credit card company or lender would approve her applications. No reputable high-paying employer would hire her, not even entry-level stable jobs were off limits. No business wanted to bring on an employee with a public record of embezzling a family member's retirement savings and fabricating police reports to frame her own mother. No one could trust someone so utterly without moral boundaries. Her world collapsed in the span of mere weeks. The sports car she bought outright with Martha's stolen funds was repossessed and auctioned off when she could no longer cover monthly payments. Every designer bag, couture outfit, and piece of jewelry she'd splurged on was sold at a steep loss to scrape together tiny fragments of cash toward her debt. The crowd of party friends who'd flocked to her side while she lived lavishly cut all ties the second they learned what she'd done. None would answer her calls or agree to meet her again. She tumbled from a life of endless indulgence and effortless wealth into abject poverty, stripped of every luxury and every person who'd once surrounded her. Unable to afford Miami's steep downtown rent, She was forced to abandon her sleek apartment and move into a cramped, run-down rental far from the coast. The space was dark, damp, filled with shoddy, outdated fixtures. There were no ocean views, no warm sunlight streaming through big windows, no fine little comforts she'd once taken for granted, only constant claustrophobia and financial stress, a brutal contrast to Martha's spacious, sun-drenched oceanfront retirement condo with unbroken vistas of the Atlantic. Once, she burned through her mother's life savings without a single thought of gratitude, living a lavish life most people could only dream of. Only now, trapped in ruin, did she finally grasp the truth. She destroyed the only unconditionally loving support system she would ever have, and pushed away the one person in the world who'd loved and forgiven her endlessly. Desperate and drowning in regret, Lydia showed up at the coastal retirement complex every single day, lingering beneath Martha's condo unit, determined to beg for reconciliation and a chance to be pardoned. She waited beside the palm-lined boardwalk at dawn as the sun crested the waves. She camped out by the building's front gate each evening as sunset spilled gold over the beach. Even late at night, when the ocean breeze turned cool, she lingered in the hallways, refusing to leave. Gone was her usual arrogance and vanity. She humbled herself completely, breaking down into bitter sobs time and time again to offer tearful apologies. She rambled on about how deeply sorry she was, swearing she'd fully woken up to her mistakes and changed for good. She promised to work tirelessly, care for Martha faithfully, and spend the rest of her days making amends. All she begged for was Martha's soft-hearted mercy, a dismissal of the lawsuits and debt repayment, just one single second chance. "Mom, I know what I did was wrong. I truly regret everything with every part of me. I never should have let greed drive me to blow through your retirement money or lie to the police and frame you. I was blinded by selfish stupidity. Can you just forgive me one more time? I'll hold down a steady job and take perfect care of you from now on. I'll never make you upset or act greedy again. Please don't cut me out of your life entirely." Day after day, her desperate pleas and weeping confessions echoed beneath Martha's windows. Every neighbor in the complex witnessed these scenes unfold. A small handful felt a flicker of pity, thinking a young person who recognized their wrongs deserved a shot at redemption. But most seniors saw the full picture clearly. Her remorse arrived far too late, rooted entirely in self-interest rather than genuine remorse. She did not grieve the hurt she'd inflicted on her mother. She panicked over her mounting debt and shattered future, and begged forgiveness only to escape her own consequences. Martha remained unshakably firm, her heart locked away against any softening, never yielding an inch. Time and again, she glanced through her floor-to-ceiling glass to spot Lydia weeping and groveling far below, gaunt and defeated. The sight stirred nothing within her, no compassion, no flicker of sympathy, no twinge of old maternal tenderness. She had seen Lydia at her absolute worst, consumed by greed, cold and cruel enough to call police at 3 a.m. to fabricate crimes that would strip an aging woman of her home and safety. She'd watched her daughter spend years draining 40 years of hard-earned savings without an ounce of guilt. Lydia's current repentance was nothing more than performative weakness born of desperation. If she still had access to Martha's funds and a shot at stealing the condo, she would not hesitate to betray her mother all over again. The harm had already been done. The trust between mother and daughter was shattered beyond repair. Once broken, that bond could never be glued back together. Martha sealed off every last crack where mercy might slip through. She turned Lydia away without exception, refusing all meetings, all conversation, and all possibility of forgiveness. To end the harassment once and for all and reclaim her peace, she contacted the community property management team and building security to file an official report. She issued clear instructions barring Lydia from entering the complex or approaching her condo under any circumstances, with orders to escort her off the premises immediately if spotted. Locked out completely with zero path forward, Lydia sank into total despair. She finally understood the harsh truth. She had drained every drop of her mother's love and patience through her own choices, permanently losing the most precious family bond and safety net she would ever know. There was no way to reverse what she'd broken. For all the years left of her life, Lydia would carry the weight of her permanent civil record and crushing repayment debt alone. Trapped in a cycle of low income, cramped living conditions, She would spend every single day paying the price for her own greed and self-centeredness, trapped in endless regret and quiet destitution. Freed from the weight and endless friction of a broken mother-daughter bond, Miami's ocean breezes stayed soft and clear, and the sunsets over the coastal retirement complex remained vivid, soothing spectacles. Now untethered from decades of worry and emotional drain, Martha stepped into a golden age that felt truly unrushed, secure, and unconfined. Her first stop the next morning was a licensed financial firm, where she formally replaced the custodian of her retirement trust. She reclaimed full authority over all her accounts and asset management, signing new compliant legal documents to place the fund under the oversight of an impartial, professional third-party fiduciary. This move eliminated every risk of letting family members handle her finances again, locking down the life savings that formed her safety net for old age. Her unobstructed oceanfront condo was hers once more, purely as a retirement sanctuary. It was no longer a target for her child's covetous schemes, no longer a bargaining chip in bitter familial conflict. It belonged solely to her, holding all the quiet comfort and ease she deserved for her remaining years. With the toxic emotional drain of her daughter fully cut away, Martha's days simplified into something rich, full, and deeply calming. Every hour unfolded gently, unhurried, and clear of turmoil. She woke each dawn to Miami's tropical sunrise, sliding open floor-to-ceiling glass doors to greet crisp Atlantic sea air. Lush evergreen palm fronds, boundless stretches of sapphire ocean, and a sky washed in unclouded pale blue filled her line of sight. She would wander slowly along the beach boardwalk, watching tides roll in and recede, listening to the steady crash of surf, breathing in bright tropical air to loosen her shoulders and quiet her mind. Mornings were almost always spent at the community senior center. She joined friends who shared her outlook for flower arranging workshops, trimming tropical blooms and arranging potted greenery to lose herself in quiet, fragrant peace. With peers her age, she played chess, chatted over small handmade crafts, and sipped light herbal tea, swapping light anecdotes and hard-earned wisdom about growing old. There were no hidden agendas, no fights over money, only genuine, warm companionship among fellow retirees. When midday sunlight hung soft and warm, she settled into a woven rattan chair on her balcony to read, steep tea, and soak up the sun. Outside her windows, clouds drifted slow across the sky, and sunlight shimmered in broken gold streaks across the ocean surface. Time moved soft and unrushed, untroubled. On occasion, she met her friends for community afternoon tea, sharing delicate pastries and casual chatter, weightless and free of stress. Evening brought Miami's most breathtaking hour of the day. The sun sank slow below the ocean horizon, spilling blazing streaks of crimson and amber across sky, sea, and sand alike. Silhouetted palm fronds lined the shore, casting soft, romantic shadows that wrapped the coastline in quiet magic. Martha often sat on wooden beach benches with her neighbors, watching the sunset unfold side by side, carried away by mild sea wind and light, harmless conversation that melted every trace of tension. No more endless emotional exhaustion from a demanding child, no constant anxiety that her life's savings would be stolen, no weariness from sacrificing her own peace to accommodate someone else's greed. She no longer had to offer endless mercy to a selfish child, no longer forced to carry the burden of another adult's poor choices. At long last, she lived entirely for herself. That brutal betrayal by her own blood had taught Martha the unvarnished truth of growing old. True happiness in your later years never hinges on obedient children or a picture-perfect family bond. It rests on assets firmly in your own control, quiet inner confidence, loyal friends who match your values, and a life free of draining obligations. Boundless soft-hearted leniency and endless self-sacrifice never breed gratitude in children. They only feed greed and entitlement, until the child's selfishness turns back to wound the parent and strip away a lifetime of hard-won security. The cruel reality of blood ties is this: giving everything you have does not guarantee love in return. Sometimes, all you get is manipulation and betrayal. Shared blood creates an innate bond, yet it is no moral chain to bind your kindness, nor an excuse for anyone to seize what you have earned. When a family member shows no gratitude, acts out of unbridled greed, and hurts you without remorse, drawing a hard line, cutting contact completely, and walking away is the wisest, bravest choice a senior can make. Sometimes Martha's thoughts drifted back to earlier decades, the lonely struggle of raising Lydia alone, the endless maternal hope and wholehearted devotion she'd poured into her daughter. But looking back now, there was no lingering regret, no bitter rage, no burning sense of unfairness, only gentle acceptance and clarity. She had done everything a mother could do, giving every ounce of love and compromise she possessed. Lydia had failed to cherish it, pushed every kindness away, and destroyed her own future through her own choices. Every hardship Lydia now endured was a consequence of her own greed, a harvest she had sown herself. Martha wasted no more emotional energy on people unworthy of her care, no longer grieved over a fractured family that could never be mended, no longer carried the weight of another person's broken life. She held fast to her oceanfront home and retirement funds, surrounded by Miami's year-round palms, soothing ocean winds, and spectacular nightly sunsets, spending her final decades alongside kind, like-minded friends. The Atlantic tides rolled slow and steady day after day. Tropical sea breezes stayed mild and endless through every season. Miami's sunsets would always burn warm and brilliant over the water. Decades of grueling labor had finally brought her peace. She had severed the burdens that drained her spirit, and the rest of her days belonged solely to calm. The best life for one's golden years is never defined by children crowding your doorstep. It means holding firm to your financial boundaries, living with clarity and independence, moving through days unhurried and untroubled, finding quiet joy in solitude, and letting gentle time wrap you in its soft warmth.